And it's something my mom has said, that's in our book, is, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option.
What was life like for you growing up with a civil rights icon?
Well, it's mom, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I jokingly say that, that whole nonviolence thing ended when she had children.
A person, living or deceased, that you'd love to make a documentary about?
Ruby Bridges.
Have you ever wondered how you can make a difference in this turbulent world? Hey family, it's Tiffany Santana, and this is Good Talk, where we have good talk with great people who help us live our best lives. Today, we're diving into how ordinary people can make extraordinary change and how to get back to the counter when life drags you off the stool. My guest today is Loki Mulholland, Emmy award-winning filmmaker, author, and son of civil rights icon Joan Trumpower Mulholland, whose work like The Uncomfortable Truth turns empathy into action by examining race relations in America. By the end, you'll have a simple framework for how to find a problem, gather your friends, and solve it. This is going to be a great one, y'all. Make sure to subscribe, comment, share, and check out the show notes so you can download the Good Talk takeaway guide for this episode. Thanks for watching. Let's get into this good talk. Loki, welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much for being here. I am so honored and so excited.
Yeah.
I found you kind of after a perfect storm of events. I saw your mom being honored here in Northern Virginia at the Black Heritage Museum in Arlington. And I thought that that was such a cool honor for a place that she's lived and worked in and served for such a long time. Then I saw you
and why
on
is this
Instagram.
white girl being honored at the
Well,
Black History
I knew
Museum?
about her, so I thought that was really cool. Like,
fair enough.
Like very cool for her to be honored in that way.
Yeah.
And then I saw you on Instagram. Now, you had questions about. I saw you one day. You were talking about all things related to Black history with such passion and fervor, and you were dressed in your Omega Sci-Fi gear. And I was like, who is this white guy that's a Q?
Yeah.
And started scrolling and found you doing things with your mom and listened to a lot of your content. And I was just so moved by the passion that you have for making this world a better place. When you said yes to be here, I was ecstatic. So I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Well, I appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you. I want to get into a little bit of your backstory. I know you get asked this question quite a bit, but what was life like for you growing up with a civil rights icon?
Well, it's mom, first and foremost.
Yeah.
I jokingly say that, that whole nonviolence thing ended when she had children, because, she was really good at spanking us and stuff. But to be fair, she was raising 5 boys as a single mom.
Wow.
Right. And there was only 4 years and 3 months that separated the oldest from the youngest, because I have an identical twin. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But she was, there's a reason why she was so tough. She'd been there and done it all. But it's for most of it, it was just life. And we had civil rights people come to the house, and those were just her friends, our college friends and stuff back in the day. And she would take us to different events and things. But it wasn't something that was necessarily like, we'd sit down every week and talk about Black history or the civil rights movement. But there was this, reflecting on it now, the way she lived her life conveyed to us, and the things that she, tried to teach us without even saying it. It was just more about living it. And so, as I said, in the film, The Uncomfortable Truth, An Ordinary Hero, about my mom and the student movement, I opened with, my mother never told us the stories. All we ever knew were the pictures, right? Which was true, because she'd had these scrapbooks, and she was, famous for keeping these scrapbooks during the civil rights movement, even, that she would pull out newspaper articles and so forth. And there was even an incident where someone would call, it was Julian Bonds at the SNCC office in Atlanta, about who was where and do we have information on this, that, and this. And he says, well, if we don't have it, call Joan over at Tougaloo, right? And if she doesn't have it, no one has it, right? And at the 50th, I think it was about the 50th or so of the SNCC reunion, it was a little earlier, but she brought out these scrapbooks. And people were just like, these SNCC folks that had joked with her about having them all those years back in college were like, oh my gosh, we can't believe you kept all this.
Yeah.
Right. But we'd see those pictures. And that was just mom in high school or in college. It just happened to be that she was sitting at a lunch counter. Right. And you'd see things, we'd focus in on things like her eyeglasses, or that ice cream was 9 cents, right? That was just Mom.
And did you have an awareness of the significance of what she had done and what she was doing throughout her life?
No, not really. I think we knew that the photo, particularly the lunch counter photo, because the Freedom Rider mugshot, they took the photos and they buried them for years, me in Mississippi. Those weren't released until years later. But definitely the lunch counter we knew that was significant in some fashion. We just didn't know how until we were in high school and the new history books came out, and there was her photo.
Wow.
Why is Mom in a history book? Right? And so I think that, for me in particular, began that journey of really understanding like what was going on. And I remember I did a summer semester at University of North Dakota with John Salter. So Professor Salter sitting there with my mom at the lunch counter with that famous photo with Annie Moody, my mom, and Professor Salter. So my mom and I both had been taught by Professor Salter. I remember being there summer semester, and sure enough, he is talking about the civil rights movement and then introduces me to the class because of my mom. And that was the first time that ever happened.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, man. But when we did An Ordinary Hero, every time I would ask somebody if they would do an interview, they said, for Joan, anything.
Wow.
I was like, really? I was like, what does that even mean? And that's when I really started to understand the depth of what she did. I still don't fully comprehend it. I mean, what her and her friends did is just remarkable to think of, the courage they had, the courage of their convictions. It blows my mind. People will stop, on a subway or on the streets or whatever, and tears, screaming in their faces as they meet my mom.
Yeah.
And thank her for what she did. And we're seeing this new generation as well, coming up and learning about the story and going, wow, because you did, I can, right? It's humbling, I don't want to measure myself against what she did. I never could, but there always is that. My mom and I are a little competitive, so I recently was inducted into my high school's Hall of Fame.
I saw that.
So I was like, yeah, you weren't inducted to yours, Mom. And I was like, oh, wait, that's right. She's in the Mississippi Hall of Fame, the Civil Rights Hall of Fame. Never mind. Like, darn it.
She got you there.
But I'm just a remarkable life.
Absolutely. Now, when you talk about lunch counter, for people who maybe are younger and they're completely oblivious to any of this, what was happening at that time?
Well, you have to go back to 1960, February 1st, 1960, in the A&T4. Now, it was the Bennett Bells who came up with the idea. So it was the women always come up with the ideas, and then the guys jump the gun and get all the credit. But it was the A&T4 who sat down, and that became the fuse for the student movement of the modern civil rights movement. There have been other sit-ins before that, but this just became that flashpoint. And within days, there were thousands. Within a month, there was tens of thousands across the South and, quite frankly, the country that were doing sit-ins. And these were at these lunch counters like the Woolworths. And so you have to kind of imagine, take a 5 and dime store, a dollar store, and add it with a McDonald's, and that's a Woolworths. But you had these lunch counters that were these massive counters, they would stretch 50 feet easily. And, you had all these stools. And now you could buy things on one side of the store if you were black, but you could not buy food at the other side. Same store. But if you wanted food, you had to get around back, or there might have been a special section of the counter where you could get the food. It was against the law to sit down at a counter together and eat. And so that was just one of those indignities that the students felt that they could do something about. And so they did.
That's really great. And you wrote a book recently called Get Back to the Counter.
Yeah.
Inspired, I'm sure, by that. You want to tell me a little bit about that book?
Yeah, well, so we have kids' books. We got the films, My Mom's Story, but we didn't have my mom said adult book. I'm like, Mom, that's not what that means. It's a book for adults. But so I wanted a book for adults and, really high school and up. But I didn't want to do a straight biography. So what we did was we dove into my mom's stories and found these 7 principles, 7 lessons from a civil rights icon. And the idea for the book was biography, but let's put some actionable plans into this. So it's kind of this sort of self-help book in a sense, but a lot of folks have taken it as well, this is how we get back to the counter, right? This is how we, get back to the action, because this is what they did. These were the principles that my mom lived by, so we can do the same thing. Really what the title really means is I asked my mom, I said, what were you thinking when they would drag you off that stool and through the mob? And she said, get back to the counter. It was that singular focus. And that's kind of the thing in life. How do you have that singular focus that when life drags you down, that you can get back up and get back to what your mission is?
That's really good.
Yeah.
How important is the concept of getting back to the counter in today's culture?
Gosh, well, it's critical. I mean, and particularly for youth. I think about the students today, what they're going through, what they've been through with COVID and everything else, social emotional learning elements that they're all in that book. I didn't know that. I had teachers tell me this. There's a teacher in Utah who buys copies for his students when they graduate.
That's
right?
amazing.
But for all of us today, even to get centered back in life and how to engage with what we're dealing with right now in our society. So it's like, we can do something. And my mom and I were just recently speaking up in Pennsylvania, and that was, something that was said. But I mean, with everything going on, it's like there seems to be so much. What do we do? What do we address? I said, well, all of it. It's all evil, right? But we just need to do our part. And it's something my mom had said that's in our book is, I can't do everything, but I can do something, because doing nothing is not an option. And the formula is simple. My mom tells us all the time. Find a problem, get some friends together, and go solve it. And people, yeah, but what about this? What about that? She goes, let me one more time. Find a problem, get some friends together, and go solve it. The tools and everything else, that is available today that we have, that's one thing. My mom, they had mimeographs, and probably most people right now have no idea what that is, and dimes in their pockets for the payphones and stuff. And we've got all these other tools that they couldn't even dream of. And yet, look what they did. I mean, they literally changed the course of history and ended, institution of segregation of racism called Jim Crow and segregation, right? They did that. So this was under the threats of, like my mom, on the Klan's most wanted list, and people were killed. We're not facing that right yet. Who is it us? Who is it? Let me phrase that. Who are we to say that we can't do something?
And I think how you phrase it and how your mom phrases it is find a problem.
Right.
And I think for those of us who have big hearts and we want to solve everything and help everybody, that can be overwhelming. But when you drill it down to find a problem, get some people rallied around that, fix that thing, then you can move on to the next thing. And we don't know how solving that one problem will have a dramatic multiplying effect.
Well, there's a saying, bloom where you're planted.
Yes.
Right. So, I mean, Greensboro did not change Atlanta. And Atlanta did not change Jackson. Right. Jackson changed Jackson. Atlanta changed Atlanta. Right. You got to work where you're at. We tell students when we're doing assemblies at schools, we're like, don't try to change the world. That's what we always hear. Change the world. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, don't change the world. Change your world.
Right.
Whatever that might be. And that's what they were doing, was changing their part of the world. And it just continued to grow from there. And other people were inspired to do that. The movement wasn't just this giant monolithic thing, right? Yes, you had these large organizations like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and SCLC, NAACP, and so forth. They all had their thing, but everything was really, unfortunately, after all these years, we see it as this one giant thing, and we're going, well, how come we don't have that? Well, they didn't really have that either. Mm-hmm. We forget that part. We also forget that, we condense this history down, like my mom's story is condensed down into 90 minutes, right? In An Ordinary Hero. That 90 minutes is over, I don't know, well, we start basically in 1951 to 1964. So, I mean, the Brown versus Board was 54. The Civil Rights Act was 64. So for 10 years, they worked at it, right? We can sit here and reflect today on Project 2025, for example. Those seeds were planted when he left office, and then it went again, right? If not earlier. So we just have to be willing to play the long game and work towards that. And when things don't happen instantly, right? It's like, okay, What'd you learn from that? How do you reload and get back at it, get back to the counter, right? We only highlight the successes in the civil rights movement. We don't highlight all the other stuff, all the failures that took place time and time and time again when things weren't working, right? So, I mean, even that sit-in Jackson wasn't necessarily a success per se. It eventually became that because it really triggered the mass movement in Jackson. But 2 weeks later, Medgar Evers was assassinated.
Right.
So you can have these moments and then bam. But they kept moving forward.
Absolutely. When you gave that time frame, 51 to about 64, I thought about my mother. My mother grew up in Fairfax County and went to Luther Jackson Senior High School. It was the only high school for Black students in the whole entire county.
Yeah.
Fairfax County's huge.
Yeah.
And I'm always fascinated that Brown versus Board was 54. She graduated in 65, and the next year in Fairfax County was when it was integrated.
Right.
So we do, I think, see these points in history in our history books, and we kind of smash it all together as one thing. But there was so much movement and so many things that had to happen in order to have some of these big major breakthroughs. Yeah. And what I love about what you do as a filmmaker, and I want to talk a little bit about that too, is that you give us insight into some of those smaller, and I use that term really loosely, smaller events that created to the whole. Yeah. That really started movements and breakthroughs and got things done. And I think it's so important, especially now, for people to really know what happened and so that we don't repeat it, because things are looking a little bizarro out here.
Yeah, we were talking about the modern civil rights movement in that context. There was plenty of people doing work long before that, and there's been plenty of people doing it. We're still in the movement.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I did a film called After Selma with Joanne Bland, who was 11 years old, had already been arrested 13 times.
Wow. When
she was knocked unconscious on the Edmund Pettus Bridge on Bloody Sunday. And someone in the audience says, well, how do we fix all this? She said, well, if we knew, we would have already done it. There's no magic thing.
Right.
You just do. And understand, when I talk about 51 with my mom, that was when she was 10 years old, and she saw the realities of separate but equal embodied in a schoolhouse for Black students in rural Georgia. And, in stark contrast to the brand new brick school for the white students. And she just said, this is wrong, and I'm going to do something about it. I asked her, I said, well, what was it, she gets asked this all the time as well, but what was it, that inspired you? She said, well, it's what I learned in Sunday school, love thy neighbor as thyself, do unto others you haven't done to you. I said, yeah, but a lot of people have read that, they've heard that. What makes you so special? She goes, I just believed it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it does take processing things like a child. It's very simple.
Yeah.
You love or you don't. Right. You show kindness or you don't. Yeah. And that we complicate it, I think, as adults. And so to have that solidified in her mind at such a young age, I can see how that would fuel her for the rest of her life once she understood that there was a wrong happened.
We're all naturally empathetic. It's a skill set we just have to relearn because we get our ego in the way.
Yeah.
Right? That's actually, one of the main chapter in our book is about empathy and how to, get that empathetic mindset back. And that's what she was, obviously displaying with empathy, going, okay, what can I do? How can I make this better?
That's really amazing. So what sparked your decision to tell the story of civil rights and to explore ideas of justice and the things going on in our country through film? Like, when did that happen?
Yeah, it happened by accident because I had done my first film, which was called Believe. I think you still find it on Amazon. It's a mockumentary, a satire about network marketing, really about Amway more than anything. And then didn't have another film after that. I knew I wanted to do something. And as a filmmaker, it's like, okay, I was kind of avoiding doing my mom's story because I didn't want to be that person that look like you're just kind of taking advantage of doing the story. Like there it is sitting there for you. That's easy, you know? But at the same time, it was like, if I didn't do the story, people would be going, how did you not do that story? I mean, it was right there in front of you. And so, I should tell the story, but I was looking for funding for the film. And there's a thing called completion funding. So you almost get your film finished, and then someone comes in, gives you the money, and takes your film over and gets all the credit. That's what completion funding is. There was this lady who a friend of mine wanted me to meet with, thought it could help with some funding. This is in Utah, that's where I was living for like 22 years. And so Salt Lake City, tied with the Sundance Film Festival folks and whatnot. So this person, we sat down. Well, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do a film about Joan Mulholland. She said, oh, I know Joan. I was like, wow, that's kind of wild. She goes, yeah, she's doing the Freedom Rider thing. So this person was actually involved in the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Rides, the Stanley Nelson film that was on PBS. And they did this big tour and stuff, the bus. Everyone's getting back on the bus and stuff. She goes, yeah, why would you want to do a film with you? I looked at my friend like, well, I was like, because she's my mom, right? I was like, that's why. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. And then she says, I'll never forget this. Can she come to Sundance and speak with Harry Belafonte about music and the movement? I said, oh yeah, she knows Harry. But no, she can't. She's not available. Right then, I was like, no. I said, she had a prior engagement, which was true. The prior engagement was my brother's son's 4th grade class in Florida, right? So I was like, yeah. So we turned down Sundance because I was like, yeah, I know exactly what this is about.
Right.
But so I did the film. It was something that, I wanted to do, and let's just get it done with. It was originally going to be actually about the sit-in itself, the famous photo, Jackson sit-in, and these lives that converge there. But every time I would talk about it, people were like, yeah, that's interesting, but man, who's this person? Meaning my mom. They really didn't know that story. So I was like, oh, okay, well, that's just mom. Okay, so I did the story of my mom, and then bringing in the student movement in general. Because I jokingly used to say she's kind of the Forrest Gump of civil rights, except it wasn't by accident. But she was in so many places and connected to so many people that she's almost, a human timeline of the civil rights movement. And so I did that film. While I was making that film, Lou Von Brown was at my house, at my mom's house, and I'm waiting for the camera crew to show up, and he said something to me in the conversation that just was like, wow. Everyone knows where the drugs are, but you never see the SWAT team raid a university. But you'll always find them in the hood. Now, why is that? And I thought I knew a few things. And so I did this deep dive and all of that. And that became the film, The Uncomfortable Truth, and the exploration of the history of racism in America, how we got to where we are. So then, Rena Evers, Medgar Evers' daughter, said, can you do a film about my family, like you did with, for your mom? I said, well, yeah, love to, but I don't want to do just that. So we had to wait for Mrs. Evers to give her blessing and so forth. And in the meantime, this other opportunity came up, which was the film Black, White, and Us, about racism through the lens of transracial adoptions. And so these were white families in Utah that thought racism was over, and then they adopted these black children. Fascinating film. So I started on that one. 2 weeks later, Mrs. Evers was like, let's do it. So I'm making those 2 films. So now I've got 4 films that are focused on social justice, civil rights stuff going on or completed. And someone's like, you're the guy who does all the civil rights films. I'm like, I don't do civil rights films. Like, yeah. And I looked at my films. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's right.
I guess I'm that guy.
It just kind of became that guy. And then Jerry Mitchell said, hey, would you be willing to do an interview for me up in Chicago and related to Emmett Till? And I was like, he told me what the interview was about. And I said, yeah, we'll do that. And he needed to do it. He was doing it for his newspaper, that he worked for, and the Clarion Ledger. I said, yes, but we'll own the footage. You have the right to use it. I said, but I want to make a documentary. And so that became Emmett Till, White Lies, Black Death. And so the films just kind of, at that point, just kind of started coming to me. Some of the ones that I was exploring, looking at, and ones that people just asked me if I would do them. But this always became this thing where it was like the uncomfortable truth became this broad umbrella. I started looking at it going, you know what? I could actually dive in and start talking about some of these points very specifically. So you get the broader understanding. Now let's dive in and start looking at what this means, which became An Ordinary Hero, and after Selma, or Dying to Vote, or, the like.
And there's so many things to cover.
Yeah.
So many
I have long
directions
answers,
you
so
can
if you want
go
me to give you short
in.
answers.
No, you're good. You're good. The more the better. This is really great. What project, I know you've done so much work, but is there a project that you're particularly proud of?
Oh, well, it's like, you don't have a favorite child, but you do. You just never say it out loud, right? Probably the one I'm most proud of is the Evers. And that's just because of the family history with the Evers family. Mm-hmm. Growing up, we knew about Malcolm, we knew about Martin, but in my mom's house, it was always, Medgar. That was a mentor of my mom's and her friends at Tougaloo College when they were there, and the civil rights movement, our connection with the family and such. So that was, to me, the most meaningful film that I've done, for me personally. I mean, more so than my mom's even. Because I didn't really know my mom at that point. Even making the film, I was like, I knew about Medgar and this, and everything that went into that. So it was like, it's just such an honor to be able to do something like that. I was like, oh, I don't need to make another film. I've done 4 more since then. But it was like, wow. Yeah.
That's amazing. I can imagine the weight of that.
Yeah.
Good weight, but the significance of stewarding the story.
It's tough. So a little story on that. So the opening of the film, if you watch the film, it's just dialogue taking place that Mrs. Evers is having with me. And it's the opening of the film. And I put it in there. It's actually day 2. So after the first day, the next morning, Rena, her daughter, calls me up and said, "What did you do to my mother?" I said, "Well, what do you mean?" She said she went home and cried all night. And doesn't know if she can even, do this. I said, "We haven't even talked about the night that Megan was killed." And she said, "I don't know if she's going to show up." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, okay." I said, "Well, I did exactly what you hired me to do. You knew I was going to do this, right?" It wasn't like, it's not like I badger people, but I know how to get them to dive a little deeper. Mm-hmm. So she goes, "I don't know." Okay. I'm like, geez, well, we didn't even get the conversation yet. So eventually the doors open in the elevator and she walks out. And she's this tiny little thing, but she's, just a powerhouse of a woman. And she comes up to me and just takes me by the hands. She goes, "Loki, I can't do this." I said, "I know." She goes, "I thought I packed this all away." I said, "I know." She goes, "I cried all night." I said, "I know." She says, "You're going to make me do this, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." So she sits down. I'd always told my camera guy, always be rolling. You never know what we're going to get. Mm-hmm. She sits down. She goes, "Okay." And that becomes the opening of the film. "Well, what do you want? What do you want to know?" Right? I said, "Take me back to the night." And she says to the camera, to me, but it almost looks like she's saying it to the camera. It's like, "You are so cruel." And I left that in there because I felt it was important for audiences to understand that yes, we're talking about historical events, we're talking about historic people, but these are people, and we're asking them to live the most horrendous moments of their lives, oftentimes, for our consumption. Now, it's important consumption, but we have to understand that, what we're putting people through, and us as the viewer, to develop that level of empathy and just to be able to sit there and see this. And it was important as well because the house itself where Megan was killed is a character in the film. And I want people to understand when they go to these places that real people lived here. They laughed and they cried and so forth. That's why I did that in that fashion. The story is really a love story, if you will. This family story. It's tough, to take people through that. And as a filmmaker, when you're doing the interviews and stuff, you really have to kind of step back and just, okay, it's kind of mean. But I let people tell their story, and then I ask questions, because they'll tell you what th're comfortable with. And then you start picking at that and going back. and diving deeper and deeper and deeper.
I think that's what's really powerful about doing historical documentaries is that it does humanize. History is about people, but history as a genre can dehumanize some.
Yeah.
And so being able to see those moments where people are just really unpacking the layers and sharing their heart, I think those are the things that resonate with us, that stick with us, and really move us to action, or at least to empathy, like you said, at best to action. And so it's a really powerful thing. Yeah. Are you really proud of that, being able to do that kind of work?
No, I am. I mean, it's you're always moved to the next film, the next project, you know. But I mean, every now and then I can step back and go, wow, you know, that's really amazing. Now, Mrs. Evers, when I got back to Utah, because that was in California, we drove back, and I called her, let her know I got home safe, and she's like, Loki, I've decided I've fallen in love with you, you know, and you know, we've had that relationship ever since.
Wow, that's amazing.
But yeah.
That's so good. So much power in that.
Yeah.
Okay, I see that you are working on another documentary called Blackwater.
Yes.
And
you got good notes.
I do.
I just posted that.
I do. I've been watching.
I was like, wow.
Tell me about the backstory. How did you find that story, and why did you decide that you wanted to do a documentary about that?
So it's interesting. So we were doing the film Dying to Vote, which is centered on the Vernon Dahmer story, but it's about those who died for the right to vote and leading up to January 6th, and those who died to protect our vote. And there's only two people in the film. It's Dennis Dahmer talking about his dad and taking us to the spot, you know, where all this went down. And then Representative Benny Thompson, who's the chairman of the January 6th committee. Wasn't a hard ask to get Representative Thompson to do that because, you know, he went to Tougaloo College, so did my mom. Okay. You know, we all know each other. But his chief of staff, Dr. Timna Washington, you know, busy schedule, needless to say. And she, you know, we were able to jump through the hoops to make it happen. But she was working on a project about this case called Hawkins versus Town of Shaw. And Shaw is in the Delta, Mississippi. And Andrew Hawkins, basically one day he walked out his door and saw that the paved roads, the power lines, the, you know, utilities, right, water, sewage, stopped where the black neighborhood began. Oh. So he sues, and he wins, you know, for equal representation of the law, right, municipal funding and so forth. Well, the police murdered his wife, and the Klan firebombed his house, killed his son and two of his grandchildren, right? So she had this project that they had shot some content on and stuff, and she just didn't feel like she was getting something out of it. So I said, well, let me review that for you. Meanwhile, there was, well, not meanwhile, but prior to that, there was a situation that was going on in Jackson, Mississippi with their water crisis stuff. Well, of course, we're familiar with Flint, and there's other places like Baltimore and Houston and so forth that had similar issues. Richmond, Virginia, most recently. And so I was like, I really want to do an exploration about, you know, how this always happens in marginalized communities, and, you know, if there's poor people, there's poor water. And so I was like, I'm going to call it Blackwater. Right? This would be an interesting title and so forth. You know, I always kind of come up with a title like that. So then she came to me and I said, well, let me review your footage of what you got, see if I can, you know, if that's some direction I can provide. And I watched it. I said, well, you just don't have a story here. I said, let me help you. She helped me. Let me help you. I think this was interesting enough. And so that became, the story is centered on this really intimate story. We talked with his daughter, Gloria, with two of her kids who died in the fire. And so we're back in Shaw, and there's all these other little things that do with that. But then there's also the broader context. It's just not enough to tell the one little story, like this is what happened, and I guess everything's good now. Well, no, there's ramifications to this, and we're seeing that today of the inequalities of, again, where you have poor people, you know, and marginalized people, you're going to have poor water, and so and sewage treatment systems and so forth. In Mississippi right now, there's 1,000 water systems. Like in small towns, they have their own water systems. 1,000 water systems on the brink of failure.
Wow.
The Trump administration rolled back there was in Alabama, particularly in the, with the black community and rural black communities, with their sewer systems was non-existent. A lot of people don't understand this, is that a lot of them don't have even septic systems. What happens is you flush your toilet, there's a long pipe that goes through your yard and eventually empties either into a creek or into your backyard. That's your medieval sewer system.
Right.
So Biden had put together a bill, and so forth, Congress had passed, whatever else, however all that works, to fund this inequality that was very much a racist thing that had taken place, this inequality. And of course, now that's considered DEI. We can't do that, and thus. So this continues to go on. And that's really what the film is about, is that water crisis and the town of Shaw and the sacrifice the Hawkins family, made for equality.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really
and again, it's a deeper aspect. It's like now we're getting kind of down to the minutia of certain things. It's not just, hey, we're sent the lunch counters, or we got this big massive thing called institutional racism. It's like, well, what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at that, and we can see that. And this lady we interviewed, Brooke Floyd, who was an activist in Mississippi dealing with the water crisis. I mean, that's, what can I do? Well, you can do that. You see a problem, you go solve it.
Yeah. That's a great example of that.
Yeah.
Seeing something that you can work on, get your friends together, get people in that community to do something about that. Yeah. That's really great. When we talk about race and racism, I always think it's interesting from white people who are passionate about this. I'm always curious about what has to happen in your mind to take up this cause so passionately and to want equality for all people. Because one of the things I'm always thinking through is, if I had privilege, would I be willing to give it up for the benefit of other people? What are your thoughts about taking a stand, taking action, doing your part in all the ways that you do to really put your privilege on the line to help other people? Do you see it that way?
Well, I just do what I do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't sit there and go, okay, well, what box can I check off today?
Right.
Right. I think part of that's just the way I was raised anyways. I mean, there is that benefit of association with my mom and how she raised us. So it's just a natural thing. I wasn't planning on being the civil rights guy who does civil rights films, and of course, there's other things I like to do in that respect of filmmaking, but there's only so much time you have, and there's a level of responsibility I feel I have to do this because I can. It's not even white privilege. Mm-hmm. It's just privilege that I have of access. Part of that is because I've shown integrity of the work that I do. Part of that's through association, right? That a lot of filmmakers wouldn't have otherwise. There's a level of trust that people, put in me to be able to tell the story correctly. So that's privilege. Mm-hmm. The sacrifice is I probably could go on and do something very commercial and so forth. And I mean, I think I have the skill sets to do something, and go make a whole bunch of money. You don't make money in documentaries, tell you that right now, and foundation work. But that's a sacrifice one makes. There's always going to be a sacrifice in something you do. The other part of it is I didn't just do one film. I didn't, that wasn't just one protest I went to. Not, pat myself on the back or anything. I'm just saying, oftentimes for white people, hey, I did my part, I showed up, mm-hmm. which is important, not diminishing that. But it's real easy to fall back into your routines. I mean, anyone who's ever been on a diet or done an exercise routine knows this.
Yes. Right?
It's that consistency and that persistency that you need to have if you're really committed to what you believe in. And, I think we all believe in eating healthy and so forth, but we're not really that committed to it all the time. And it's not like every day I wake up and I'm doing civil. Well, I guess nowadays I am because that's what I do for a living, right? But I do go and actually, have fun. I just saw the new Mission Impossible movie yesterday. I did take a break.
Yeah.
Right. But it is a 24/7 thing for me.
Yeah, that was the word that came to mind for me, was like a lifestyle.
It is a lifestyle.
Yeah.
But again, I put it in perspective. This isn't remotely anything to what my mother did and her friend.
Sure.
I mean, I don't sit there and now other people look at it and go, wow, you're doing a lot. I'm like, I don't think I've done anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I think they felt the same way. It's like, all right, we interviewed the sit-in, the lunch counters. What next? What next? What next? Those same people that were doing the sit-ins were the ones that kept it going on the freedom rides. Right. And then when they were in the deep South there, taking a look around, going, okay, well, we can sit at the lunch counters now. We can ride the buses. What's next? Like, you know what? If we can't vote, nothing's really going to change. Mm-hmm. Right? Because the power is still going to be the power. So we need to change the power. Those who represent, your beliefs and needs. So that's became the massive push. Not that there were other people who weren't doing it before, but it just became the momentum of the moment, and which led to the voting rights Act 65.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to take a left turn.
Go
You're
ahead.
a dad.
I am a dad, yeah.
So what do your kids think about all this?
Probably about the same as what we thought about my mom.
Mm-hmm.
That's just dad doing his thing. I don't have my kids aren't sitting there. They're not that age yet. They're like, wow, I'm just really proud of you, Dad.
Yeah.
Right. They're in their 20s.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of funny. I mean, my high school Hall of Fame, my daughter, I text my daughter, well, my two daughters, I text them, and one replied back going, oh, is that like your honorary degree? I'm like, you little snot.
Oh, those 20s.
I have the honorary doctorate, right? So it's a good college. But, I like to think they're proud of me.
Yeah.
It's I'm sure they, I mean, I pop up on their Instagram feeds from time to time, not that they follow me and stuff, but it's inevitable at some point.
Yeah.
And they know that I do all this sort of stuff.
That's really cool.
I think, like, my siblings don't get involved, but we were kind of designed that way to be very independent. And if someone's doing one thing, then the rest of us need to kind of stay off from that. But at the same time, they're also like, he's got it covered, so we don't have to worry about it, which is true in a lot of the families. Like Mina Evers, her brother was like, well, he's got to take care of it. So we don't have to worry about it. But there's a lot of the civil rights activists who, from my mom's time, that are just like, man, I wish I had someone who was doing what you're doing for your mom. Because these stories are just going to disappear.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there are these databases, like the SNCC has databases and so forth of these stories, and a lot of that's been happening in the past 10 years. But it's not remotely what it needs to be, and the details and the depth of and the meanings of the stories are just fade over time.
Yeah. Film's going to be really important for that over time as we move forward. I'm positive of that. Yeah. Okay, a couple more questions before we go.
Just getting started.
We're just getting started. I have to have you back because we have too much to talk about.
You can keep on going. A couple episodes.
I love it. Okay, what do you think, and I think I've heard you discuss this question before, but what do you think has changed since your mom's activism in the 60s, and what hasn't changed?
Nothing's changed. I think we think it has, but it hasn't. We already have the blueprint, right, which they got from others. It's the same principles. We just have to apply them. We're still facing similar issues. It's not lunch counters and those sort of things, but they're the issues that we have today, right, that still impact us emotionally and so forth, mentally. And so we still have to be out there just doing it. The tools might be different, but and that's also to our detriment. Yeah, we can record stuff. Yeah, we can send out petitions online and social media and all these sort of things. And I think that kind of gives us this sense of achievement of sorts, but it's not. It's important for the documenting. It's important to do those sort of things. But what really made a huge difference in the civil rights movement and why things changed, besides just the consistency, was that they were physically there. You forced people to confront it, being at that lunch counter, being on the buses and so forth, voter registration, going out there and knocking on the doors. That one-on-one connection has to happen. I think that's the one thing that that we miss a lot of, And we can say, because of COVID and whatever else, and yeah, everyone's living on their phones and things like that. But there are plenty of people who are out there doing it. Part of the challenge is there's just so much mass media that it's not just 3 channels like it used to be. And there's so much coming at us that we just forget and move on to the next thing. But those problems are still there, and there are people who are still there dealing with it and still working on it.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember a problem that you had in your community, guess what? I bet you there's still something there that you can do about it.
Absolutely.
Still work on it. What's cool is there are websites now where you can go and where's volunteer service needed. So you just show up and shut up, right? Just show up and do your job, whatever you're asked to do. I think that's critical. So oftentimes I think we kind of bemoan that fact. We're sitting there going, these kids nowadays are not doing anything. It's like, no. There's a group of kids like in Montana or Wyoming that sued the state, college kids, who sued the state because they felt the government was violating the state constitution for clean air by supporting the coal industry. And they won.
Wow.
Students.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think the students that are motivated now, they do have different tools. And
Yeah.
I think those tools can be really powerful to mobilize people to actually show up and
Right.
be there. So that's exciting, those kinds of things.
Yeah. But you still have to show up. You still got to do there's a lot of, we see the highlights of March on Washington or the photographs of the Freedom Rides and so forth. But it's the day in, day out behind the scenes. We go, all right, Rosa Parks. We integrated the buses. It's like, okay, how many days did they march, guys?
Right.
How many days did they go through that? Right? A year? Are you willing to walk 7 miles to work each day for a year to make that happen? We forget that part.
Yeah.
Right?
Wow, really good. I want to close with a couple of rapid fire questions. It's the Good Talk Fast Five.
All right.
All right, a person, living or deceased, that you'd love to make a documentary about.
Ruby Bridges. And I know her.
Yes.
And I've asked her for years, and I just can't get her over the hump on that one.
She did the forward of the book, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
See, I told you I've been doing my homework.
Yeah.
A film that changed your perspective.
Star Wars.
Ooh, interesting. Why?
Because that was like a magic moment of like, wow, this is, movie magic. And then I learned that real people actually make movies.
Wow.
And I could do the same thing.
Fantastic.
And ever since, I knew at that point I wanted to make movies.
So good.
I was like 4 years old.
So good. Do you have a go-to scripture or quote that helps you when things get tough?
See it through. The poem, see it through.
I love
When you're up
that.
against trouble, meet squarely face to face. With your chin, set your shoulders, plant your feet, and take a brace. Yeah.
See it through.
See it through.
Awesome. What's one thing you wish more people understood about race in America?
Oh, gosh. That's a whole different discussion. Like I'm supposed to say like a rapid fire thing.
One thing.
What do I say? What's the question again?
One thing that you wish more people understood about race in America.
It's real.
Okay. Good. Good enough. All right. In one word, what makes a good talk?
When I say race, you're saying race or racism?
Race. Because I know that's a
Racism.
different conversation.
Race isn't real. So scratch that answer. I was thinking
Okay.
racism.
I can go with that. Because
because race isn't real. We know it's a social construct.
Right.
Right. So race, one thing to understand is race is not real. It's a social construct that was created to suppress a group of people. Right. And that we're all God's children. So fundamentally, that's what we need to understand, that we're all brothers and sisters, that race is created to say that we are not.
Wow. That's good. All right. In one word, what makes a good talk?
So it makes a good talk. Empathy.
100%. So true. All right. Final question.
All right.
Two things, actually. What's one message you want listeners to carry forward from our conversation?
I'll same thing my mom said. I can't do everything, but I can do something because doing nothing's not an option. We all can do something. Anyone can make a difference. You just have to make the choice.
I love that. How can people support you or learn more about your work or get involved with you?
Yeah, go to our website. Obviously, we're on social media and stuff, but go to our website, support the foundation and the work that we're trying to do. donate, right? Become a sponsor, a recurring donor. $1, $3, $5 a month. Doesn't seem like a lot. Hopefully it's not a lot to you. And you can do that. That's something very easy. People want to know what they can do. You can do that.
Yeah.
Because we got things that we're doing. And you're probably wishing, well, I wish I could do that. Well, you can. You can support. People forget that. The movement wasn't happening without financial support. And there were plenty of people who were providing that, not just Harry Belafonte and so forth, right? But there were even, in Mississippi, white women giving money to the help to give to Medgar.
Yeah.
You know, they had to do it secretly because their Klansmen husbands would probably, that would happen with that. But people were doing something. And and the fundamental thing was financial support. That's what we need more than anything to be able to continue the work that we do. A lot of a little is a lot. It all adds up. Don't think your little $1 a month won't make a difference.
Absolutely.
It will.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate you. I definitely want us to have another conversation.
Yeah, we got you. Yeah,
we
I
have
was still
so many
too short
things to talk about, but we definitely will do that. And if this conversation moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And check out the show notes for Loki's documentaries and for the Joan Trumpauer Mulholland Foundation. Thank you so much, and I hope you have enjoyed this good talk.